You're very welcome to the next episode in our Work From Anywhere series. Today we'll be speaking about digital nomads and the digital nomad jobs of the future with Tongayi Choto, Margaux Miller and Mayur Sontakke. The following week we've got a break, but the week after, on the 11th of August, we'll be speaking with Dave Kearns, Laurel Farrer and Sandra Panera. The topic is going to be work is not just a place. So tune in, and for now enjoy episode 7. Hi everyone, you're very welcome to the next episode in our Work From Anywhere series. Today we've got a great lineup ready for you today, but before we get into the actual topic and bring the panelists on, I just want to help set the scene. And there's two aspects I just want to bring to our attention. And the first one is when we think of digital nomads, many of us think it's somebody from North America or Western Europe that's going to a beach in Thailand. And for sure that will be a part of it. But what we're also seeing now is we've got to remember our own biases. It's just as much the Indian expat who is working in North America that wants to go back to their family for a couple of months a year, or for example, the Eastern European expat working in Western Europe that wants to go back to their family, maybe to care for their parent that might be sick in Poland, for example. So just to remember our own biases around this, and it's not just quite as simple as I said of the Eastern Europe, the Western European or the North American going to that beach in Thailand. The second aspect that I wanted to draw your attention to today was also the evolution of digital nomad visas. That we used to think, for example, digital nomads was typically somebody going around, let's say, could be Southeast Asia on a leisure travel visa and not declaring their tax, for example. And for sure, that's been a trend for the last couple of years. But what we're seeing now is the evolution of work from home and remote workers. It's just as much, and even more so now, people that want to do it correct and want to make sure they pay the right tax, for example, because if they don't do it right, they're going to get their employers into trouble. So there are two things that are going to dramatically increase the size of the market for digital nomads. And with that, I'd like to bring in all our wonderful panels today, where we will be discussing the digital nomad jobs of the future. So I'd like to bring on Margaux and Mayur and Tongayi. And if we might start with doing a little bit of a round of intros. Margaux, would you like to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, John. So as you said, my name is Margaux Miller. I am the head of community at Toptal. And I know you had a whole separate episode about community, so it's fun today. We get to talk about a bit of a different angle on things. But at Toptal, we're essentially a global network of freelance talent. So we hire the top 3% of freelance talent from around the entire world. These talent are focused in verticals like development, design, product management, project management, and also most recently we have a finance vertical as well. So talent in all of those different fields. And it's been basically just over 10 years now that Toptal has been thriving as this fully distributed global company. That's a word I think maybe not everyone uses actively, being fully distributed. It basically means that from day one, we were a remote company. And so obviously in the last year with the pandemic and different things changing, there's been a lot of companies kind of moving to that. We're excited to talk, and I can share some later today about how we've really been doing that since day one. So now we've got over 5,000 individuals working in a fully remote environment in over 100 different countries. So to be clear, we have no office. We've never had an office. And then the community team that I run is focused on connecting Toptal and all of our exclusive talent that are in this fully remote network that we have, connecting them with networking events, pro bono work, mentorship, speaker training programs, even just general peer-to-peer connection that they can find through our online community and channels, and more than that too. But basically, really happy to be speaking today about the amazing work opportunities that we have to offer at Toptal, but especially those relevant to people who are looking at this lifestyle of being a digital nomad. So thanks for having me today, John.
Hello, John, I think you're on mute.
Oh no, well, I bet you we're still doing intros if someone else wants to jump in.
All right, sure, I'll jump in. Yeah, so I'm Tongayi Choto. Thank you so much for having me. I'm the co-founder and CEO of AfriBlocks. We are a global Pan-African freelance marketplace. And what we do is we seek talent across the continent, be it designers, developers, marketers, and connect them with remote jobs across the world, mainly in the USA, the UK, and Canada. And our mission is to unleash the potential of African professionals by providing them with the technology tools that allow them to participate and to thrive in the global gig economy. So yeah, that's AfriBlocks, and I'm Tongayi Choto, happy to be here.
Okay, apologies for that sound issue there. I appreciate, apologies for my meltdown. I got my COVID vaccine like less than 48 hours ago, so I'm obviously just having a bit of a melt. Mayur, would you be able to give us an intro for yourself, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks, John, for inviting me to this panel. It's great to be here. I am a digital nomad turned co-living entrepreneur. So I started my digital nomad journey back in 2014 when the world really did not know, especially this part of the world, did not know much about remote work. Spent few years building remote teams at a startup. Then just felt that, okay, I really need to make remote work popular in India and India popular among global digital nomads. So I started running retreats to build this community and provide this safety net for people who wanted to explore India. And while doing that, I just felt like I needed to have my own space. And we started NomadGao back in August 2019, just before the pandemic. And it's been an exciting journey, exciting 2 years. We are completing 2 years on August 1st. And that's great.
Well, congratulations. I mean, it just goes to show a lovely mix of panelists here today to really kind of touch on this topic of digital nomads. I mean, one of the things we've seen is a massive growth in digital nomads. I was looking on Google Trends there yesterday, and there's been over 100% increase in the searches for digital nomads since January 2021. And on top of that as well, we're seeing a growth in work from anywhere policies as well. Can you maybe talk us through, how are you seeing this with your own clients? Maybe Margaux, you might kick us off there. How are you seeing this impacting your clients, this whole growth in digital nomads and work from anywhere policies?
Yeah, to your point of how many people are searching it, it's interesting. It's fortunate for us that we've been fully remote and distributed since day one. So for over 10 years, like I was saying kind of in my intro there. So our core team, like those who run the network, so the core team that I'm on, we're from, even within the core team, over 100 countries, and we truly do work from anywhere in the world. So I think for us, like internally, the change has of course not been as dramatic, but when it comes to the talent side of things, people kind of wanting to be part of a freelance network like Toptal, our talents also of course can work anywhere in the world. And of course, this becomes a bit harder when we've got things like opposing time zones to certain locations. So I think still there's probably a few more hurdles depending where exactly in the world you're living. For example, if you're in Australia, it could mean some tricky hours if you want to freelance for major Fortune 500 clients that are based in USA or UK, for example. So, because that's just, one good example of very opposing time zones where that can become a hurdle. But I think ultimately, when we're talking client side, the key is really having buy-in at all levels and finding the right technologies to be able to really facilitate those relationships. Sometimes people can work really well asynchronously depending on the kind of project they're working on. And ultimately, for us, we're constantly iterating to stay on top of our growth and our team's needs that are virtual and that are remote. So yeah, I think it's for us, the change has not been too dramatic, but really exciting that we've got more and more people looking to work in the environment that we can help offer at Toptal. So it's exciting.
Well, it is. I mean, it just goes to show this trend we've been seeing towards these kind of models, like what you have, in Toptal and AfriBlocks and many others. It's a very exciting. I'm sure you'll get plenty more growth over the next couple of years. And then what about you, Mayur? How are you seeing it with your clients? Are you seeing companies approach you or individuals approach you, getting more activity, more interest, more inquiries? Especially since the pandemic is starting to, at least it's looking coming towards the end of it.
Yeah, definitely. So interestingly, when we started, we were sort of exclusive space for non-Indians because there were no Indian digital nomads back then. And then the pandemic happens and we have all Indians. A lot of startups are approaching us saying that they don't have an office anymore, but they would want to spend a month or two together. And they want this transitionary office, which is a co-living, co-working space. and they don't want to invest their energy on building the infrastructure or getting the place ready. So they're coming to us and saying, hey, we want to be together for a while, can you arrange for us? Or there are some edtech companies which used to run offline boot camps. Rather, yeah, not edtech, they have become edtech companies. They were just education companies before the pandemic. So they are approaching us, they're saying that, okay, we want to run a boot camp for 20 students, can you arrange for this? So we are seeing a lot of changes in terms of startups and education companies approaching us.
That's one of the things we've also heard in the previous episode as well with the business travel industry, that the people going on short trips, they're gone. That part of the industry in many ways is people going for a few hours is gone. But to partly compensate that will be the likes of many of these startups and large companies that have virtual teams that need to meet in person at least, once or twice a year. So exactly to your point. And how would you see it then, Tongayi? Do you see as well, digital nomads having an impact and work from anywhere policies on you and your business, or is that further yet to come?
I think it has made a lot of change. We started last year around March. That's when I went full time from my other startup to work on this full time, and then just before we started, that's when the pandemic hit last year in 2020, and it was actually the time where everyone was like, okay, I'm home. The first 3 days you're excited, you're like, okay, I'm not going to work. Then, a couple of days later, you're like, okay, I need something to do. So people were actually, going online, starting that business that they've always wanted to, starting that, startup, that side hustle. And, that actually reflected into our business with people actually, requesting services like website development, design work, and things like that. And generally, I think this side in Africa, it will take a while. Because corporates and the private sector have been used to working in offices, but now it's kind of a hybrid model where because of the pandemic you kind of come in 2 days a week, and the other days you're working from home, and companies are trying to catch up with the right tools to use, the right technology. Are we going to use Zoom, Skype, or Hangouts and things like that? So, but we've seen that trend is growing fast because the pandemic just made everyone realize that it's actually, easier, or it's actually something that we can do to work from home. Sometimes you don't need to meet. So yeah, we've seen, a huge growth in that space, and I think it's going to continue on that trajectory of growth.
Interesting. Then if you take that point, then, that kind of growth, work from anywhere has made it easier to hire somebody from the other side of the world, but has it made it easier to hire somebody from Africa then in that case?
I think that's where our platform comes in, because what we realized was like right now Africa is the youngest continent in the world, with 60% being under the age of 25. Population is 1.3 and it's expected to double by 2050. But the issue is there was no one platform or collaboration tools that allow you to hire someone, collaborate on the project, get it done, look at, milestones, deadlines, and make a payment to someone in different parts of Africa. These are different countries, different regulations and things like that. So that's why we say, let's build that technology infrastructure that allows anyone in the world who wants to work with African talent to be able to do that in an easy and seamless way, from posting a job to the payments. So that's where our platforms come in. There are other platforms that are also doing the same in the space. But what we said was, let's build the whole technology ecosystem or infrastructure that allows, you want to hire 13 people or 300 people to work on a project on the space of a month. You should be able to do that and be able to know who's working on what, from which country, how much am I paying, and it should be, as easy as possible. So that's the infrastructure that AfriBlocks is currently building.
You can definitely see. I mean, on the one hand, the kind of inertia from certain, let's say, larger companies in Africa who might take a while to get used to this concept, but then the enormous potential, as people become more used to remote work. But then, if you look at it, then Margaux, for the likes of US and Europe, I mean, how are you seeing it there? Are are companies open to hiring digital nomads? And then what are you finding then in terms of the challenges to working remotely? What are the typical hurdles and challenges that people run into?
Yeah, all good questions. So I mean, our company has been growing exponentially, which tells you that more and more clients are willing to hire freelance top talent really around the world. We've been a hyper growth company for some years now already. And to your question about kind of comparing to a couple of years ago, as far as like where, if things are evolving actually now, the pandemic has really become awesome for this trust, I think. And Tongayi was making a few good points about that. Companies are going remote who never used to be. For example, like in the US alone, let's say there were companies that were, say, only based in San Francisco, but now they're kind of saying, okay, you could actually also be in Austin or Denver or, a couple other US cities. But then once they start to do that, it's an easy extension from there to realize that they can hire in England, they can hire in India, they can hire in Africa, right? That extension from there is a little bit easier because they've already made those exceptions to kind of hire outside the first city that they're in. So I think we'll continue to see that movement as people kind of realize we can get this amazing talent and they can support us from anywhere, because now they've already had to set up some of those systems to work with people that weren't in their physical city. So I think that's going to be a really nice trend. Now that we're really all kind of experts in this remote work, right? As far as your question about kind of concerns that clients might have with getting on board, so if they're still kind of on the edge, I'd be curious to know what our other panelists think about this too, because I think one of the things that we sometimes run into are, and some of this is like assumption based, right? But that sometimes clients are concerned a little bit with like communication skills. Are they going to have strong enough English if I'm hiring from different areas of the world? Are they going to feel comfortable communicating with the talent and making sure that the job gets done with the level of professionalism that's required to work with their internal teams? Like sometimes our freelancers are coming in and working with an existing project manager or part of a bigger team. And I think a lot of this is assumptions, right? Like it's people just maybe not being used to it yet. I think, again, like as soon as people start to realize, right, we've got the connectivity all over the world now. The professionalism is quite similar, actually, sometimes stronger in other areas of the world than a lot of these clients maybe coming out of the US, to your question, the US and Europe. And then with time overlaps too, like our talent know how to be flexible. If they want to work for some of these exciting projects, they're happy to work different hours a day. In fact, many people who work in this lifestyle, right, it's like they prefer to work weird hours, and that's why this is maybe even better of an environment for them. So yeah, I think COVID's shown us working remotely is much more possible than people thought. Building a team with remote on-demand talent from around the world is going to be that natural extension of the process, I think. And we really don't have to be all in the same place. So let's take advantage of that. Let's hire the best experts in the world, not just in our local cities.
Well, two examples of that, Margaux. Look at the map of the world behind you and look at the people on this call. We've got Margaux, you are in Canada.
Yep.
Mayur, you're in India. Tongayi, you're in Zimbabwe. I'm in Ireland. I mean, if this isn't as good an example,
that's 4 continents, right?
But
right, and
it's
it took us
interesting
3
to see the
seconds to
challenges.
connect.
That's what it is.
Like there were no issues with us connecting either, right? Like we got on a call and started talking about whatever the topic was and whatever we needed to do. There was no hurdle. Exactly.
Even the preparation for this particular call, we did it asynchronously, WhatsApp messages and whatnot, an email or whatever it was. So that it just goes to show. Mayur, can you tell us what you're seeing with the trends for remote workers in India? I mean, I have heard of the concept of digital nomads, for example. Can you tell us more about the trends you're seeing in remote work in India? I mean, even tying into Margaux's point there as well, she was mentioning about in some cases, like some of the hurdles that can be run into.
Yeah. So I just realized that we are like from 4 different continents. So we represent half of the world. So coming to India, larger companies in India are behind the curve when it comes to remote work adoption. But then startups are taking over. Like in the first 6 months of 2021, startups have raised more money than they raised in the entire 2020. And this is just the beginning. So there are like 40 unicorns this year itself. There are 12 new unicorns, which are disrupting the way they work and they look at the market. So a lot of startups are actually going remote. I've been, it's been a pleasant change because when I started working remotely, a lot of my relatives felt like I did not have a job because I was traveling and They were like, okay, do you even earn money, or does your company pay for your travels? And we have come a long way since then. There are some companies which are preparing Indians for remote jobs abroad. So there is this company called Pesto Tech. Uh, they run this coding boot camps to prepare Indians to take up remote coding jobs. So there is a lot of change happening. At NomadGao, when we started, we did not have many Indians, but the pandemic brought a lot of Indians to our space, who are trying remote work for the first time, who are forced to try remote work for that matter.
So that's fascinating. So essentially, that's digital nomads. So these are people that, for example, are in the same country and even the same area where they live, but they're accessing these fantastic jobs, be it from the kind of platforms like Toptal, AfriBlocks, many others, where they can get these fantastic jobs around the world. So that concept of digital nomads goes back to the point I was making that I badly made at the start of the introduction of how we see digital nomads. It doesn't have to be people going abroad to a beach in Thailand. It can be just as much those people going back and staying close to family. And one of the things we touched on in another episode is that you see from an intercultural perspective, cultures that are very collectivistic, for them, being close to family is really important. And so that's something to bear in mind with the evolution. Again, touching on exactly what you're seeing. And then, Tongayi, can you tell us from an African perspective, what countries are at the forefront of this, at developing the right skills to support remote work, that maybe are investing heavily in engineering and tech skills? Can you tell us more about that?
Okay, so I think upskilling is, something that's really important. Any part of the world, if you're a designer, you always need to know what's going on. And I think the tech ecosystem in Africa currently is growing exponentially, and some of the leading countries, South Africa, Kenya, Egypt, Ghana, and Nigeria, and they've been doing amazing work in that space. And as AfriBlocks as well, we partnered with DataCamp to allow all of our freelancers to access data science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning courses for free. Because part of our thesis is that, there is a global impending skills talent shortage of about 85 million people that's going to leave 85 million jobs unfilled within the next 10 years. And those jobs will be because there are not enough people with the skills that are being required by the world. So part of our thesis is that, we're currently, Africa is in a unique position to fill that gap because, of the talent and the young population. So we're currently providing those resources to that talent to say, you can train in these courses today that the world is going to need tomorrow. So and also Zambia has been doing amazing within the past. I mentioned them because within the past few months they've done about 20 hubs within the last few months. So that's something that I think is going to continue to happen within the continent, and especially with the investment that's also coming in startups in Africa. I've seen between 2018 and 2019 there was a jump of about $1 billion in investment in startups in Africa. So all of those things are going to contribute to the growth of the African tech ecosystem.
Good one. And I've just, in the meantime, since you've been speaking, I got a very important correction. We've actually got 5 continents here because the wonderful Donal is in the background with the magic fingers organizing things. So we actually have 5 continents on this particular episode, which is a first. So that's a nice one. So that's good to have the context about Africa and what's going to happen there. I mean, you can see, and I can feel listening to you, Tongayi, that there's an explosion of opportunity that will happen in the continent. It seems to be the right place, the right time, right moment. It'd be interesting to see how that kind of evolves over the next 5 to 10 years. Can you then tell us, Margaux, looking at from, let's say, the skills, like what are the kind of skills that digital nomads need to get on a platform like Toptal? Like what's the number one skill that can differentiate them?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a tough question, but I think and maybe it seems like such a common answer, but I think, really the top skill outside of having domain expertise, like knowing your tech skill or whatever it is, because like I said earlier, we have a few different verticals now with development, design, product and project management and finance. So there's a few options, but after that domain expertise, it's really communication. It's the ability to own your work and be able to communicate really well. Oftentimes as a freelancer, you are really responsible for a whole piece of a project or a whole project kind of end to end. So you almost, no matter which skill you have, you almost still need some of that like project management type skills. You really need the ability to be able to communicate where things are at, give status updates, like keep things on track, keep things moving forward. So it's kind of those kind of two things put together. As far as Toptal and kind of getting into the network, we do have a screening process that is pretty robust. So to pass our screening process, there's several steps. You have to showcase, that clear communication as well as your domain expertise. And there's also a real world assessment. So kind of like a test or a showcase of your work skills. But what's really cool is that once we screen all the talents, and we also screen our clients, so this is important to know too, but we have these like top tier professionals in our network. And then once they've gone through this screening process one time, they're now in the network and they don't have to continue to do that to this ever again, basically, once you're in. So our clients understand that we have this robust screening process. So when you're picking up new projects or new work, you won't have to do that traditional interviewing over again and proving your skills, because our clients have that trust in Toptal that those skills have already been vetted for. And then if you were asking John about like some of the main skills that we need as far as like tech skills, Tongayi is going to mention this too, I'm sure, as far as some of the programs they're offering and like skills that are really in demand. There's still a really big demand from our clients for React JS, React Native, for Flutter, for Ruby on Rails. So if you're listening and you have any of those skills, come apply and there'll be great jobs for you around the world. Like there really is. It's a great place to, tell your kids they should be going into those skills. Like there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, so those engineering skills, I mean, it's one of the things that you see that, it's engineering skills, they're highly mobile skills as well. You can do it from anywhere in the world, perfectly suits the digital nomad side. And then you see these kind of platforms like Toptal and AfriBlocks. It'll offer tremendous opportunity in future. But then coming back to the workplace and even where we work, I mean, we've often heard of the words that, work is not just a place anymore. Especially with the growth of co-working spaces and communities, Mayur, how are you seeing that, in NomadGao? What does this mean for the future of our workplaces?
Yeah, so the whole idea of NomadGao was started because we wanted to create a village for digital nomads. So Gav in Hindi and some Indian languages means village. And at that point in time, I was advocating to Indians that work need not happen in big cities, because if you look at cities in this part of the world, they're polluted, crowded, expensive. And I felt that it was unnecessary, because I spent a year in a village in the Himalayas back in 2016, and that kind of changed my perspective to look around the things. One thing that is often talked about remote work is the lack of human connection, right? You can work from anywhere, but then you don't have the human connection if you're working from home or if you're in your own silos. So I feel the next big thing is smaller communities where you can connect with others, and it's like a family, but then it's a family of strangers doing different things and collaborating on different projects. So we have been seeing this in NomadGao. Like I've lived in communities in the past where they were very homogeneous, people doing the same thing. And I felt, okay, we really need diversity out there. So we have hosted artists, freelancers, startup founders, and I think people have started realizing that office is not the only place to socialize, because in office you meet same kind of people, but in a co-working or co-living place, you actually get to meet people from different backgrounds. And I think, going ahead, especially in places like, Africa or India, where the population is younger, they're ready to explore new way of living. We'll see the emergence of smaller micro co-working, co-living spaces.
So the idea of micro communities, I mean, it's a very, very fair point that, on the one hand, being able to work from home means you've got much more of a stronger human connection with your family and with your friends, for example, but against that, you lose a bit of that kind of face-to-face connection, obviously, with your coworkers. So then trying to bridge that gap and have a professional community of, like you say, of strangers that you can share ideas is going to be very, very important. But I mean, clearly then seeing your colleagues is something that would be hugely beneficial as well. Coming back to a point that Margaux made earlier about the digital nomad skills of the future, can you tell me, Tongayi, what's your view of the digital nomad jobs of the future? What are the big ones that'll be to watch out for?
Sure. One thing that's interesting that me and my co-founder realized, while we were, building our startup, we were looking for this information, and it was hard to find. So what we said was, let's create that information. So we just created, a report, Africa and the Future of Work report, which includes, some of this information. So I'm just reading from it. But, the top emerging roles have been, in cloud computing. Something that was interesting is content production as well, data science and AI engineering, then sales. Sales, I think it's always going to be there because people need sales. But those are some of the top, emerging roles. And something
I would say as well, Tongayi, any resources that are mentioned here as well, we'll make sure and include them on the post afterwards so people get access to them. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, but yeah, those are the top ones. And there was a report that was made by the United Nations as well that also showed, data analysts and data scientists and project managers, which was, interesting to me, some of the roles that the world is currently needing.
Okay, good to know. So kind of a wide range of different opportunities, really, and ultimately all of them very, very highly mobile. So the next question that I have would be around, Margaux, like the joys and challenges for remote workers. What are some of the challenges? For example, do you find that tax is a pain point for them? Or what about isolation, for example? When you speak to them in the community, what are the challenges and the joys that they mention?
It's all joys, John. No, I'm kidding. Of course, we all know there's challenges with any kind of job that you have, right? And I think that's probably the most important thing. I think people start to look into this lifestyle. They read all these, articles and blogs and come to amazing networks, and they are just hearing the things that scare them. But every job has pros and cons, and this lifestyle and this work style has pros and cons. To your point and Mayur's, the human connection is definitely part of it. And you mentioned micro communities too, Mayur, and that's really clearly what an organization like ours or AfriBlocks or many other groups that have these communities that are co-living spaces like you've got, that's where you can really kind of replicate that and benefit from that. So yes, if you're trying to be a totally independent contractor and have running your own business by yourself, the human connection can certainly feel, like you are alone sometimes. That's why I think there's such a huge advantage of networks like Toptal, where you are literally not alone. Even though you might be working for a client independently, our community and our micro communities that we create are really key. So we've got online channels where you can communicate with people in any country. You can ask the kinds of questions like, how do I set up my taxes, to people who have been doing it for years already and have been part of Toptal for years. So we have, Slack channels in different areas online where people can ask those questions with immediate feedback. So community is really so important when you're making that move. It can also be a really great source of joy because there's all kinds of other ways to get involved than just asking the questions that you have. There's, events that we have. We can help people share experiences, similar experiences around the world. So you could do virtual events if you want to connect with people who have the same skills as you, but might be somewhere else. Or we also facilitate in-person events in many communities around the world. So you can meet people who are freelancers at Toptal like you, maybe in different skill sets, but who are physically, regionally close to you. So there's kind of both options. I am a big believer in both types of virtual and in-person events. And I think, you can plan visits to friends who are in the network because you're all part of this similar community and you all kind of understand each other. To get to the side though, truly that you were asking about challenges and the taxes and things like that. Yeah, first, setting yourself up for success as it relates to taxes, it does take a minute. Each country has unique expectations and the processes are different, and you do need to learn your own in your own countries. There's a lot of information out there now about kind of remote work visas and which countries are allowing that. I think even more information is available in the last year, of course, right? But I would say if you have friends who are already freelancers or living this digital nomad life, or even if they just own their own sole proprietorship in your city or in your country that you're based in, that's a really, really good place to start. And again, that's why joining a community of freelancers to find your work or to be part of a physical community somewhere can be so important, because you can get those answers from people then that are doing it just like you.
Yeah, you mentioned a very good point on the digital nomad visas. So Donald's going to share in a minute the recent tool that we launched on digital nomad visas. We've got the list of all the digital nomad visas around the world. Which of those cover you for tax or not? Coming back to the community aspect, I mean, it is definitely crucial. I think it's something that Toptal's done very, very well, building that community and like-minded people. Mayur, can you talk to us about how you built a community in NomadGao?
Yeah. So our community keeps changing, because when we started, it was like a lot of people during my digital nomad journey told me that they wanted to visit India, but they were not sure about safety and, connectivity and culture shock and all. So when we started, the focus was on to create a safe place for global digital nomads to come and explore India. Over the time, the focus had changed. Now the focus is on, there are a lot of first timers, Indians who have tested this lifestyle a bit now because of the pandemic, and they want to explore it further. So for them, we are educating them on how to be digital nomad, what to do, what are the pros, what are the cons. And I think Toptal, even during my digital nomad days, I used to refer to Toptal because that was one of the few companies to offer remote roles. And yeah, so we basically provide resources to people. And what's more important here is the human connection. So we make people feel welcome. We make them feel like they belong here. And it makes everything else easy, because you don't really have to sell anything, because people know they can trust you, and this is the place where they can be themselves. And that sort of builds the opens them up and builds that nice little community.
Absolutely. No, 100%. Tongayi, then what about taking a bird's eye view then? This one kind of work from anywhere revolution that we're seeing. Do you think that that's something that will structurally help reduce the brain drain out of Africa longer term, and maybe even bring digital nomads to Africa? Or maybe is it not quite there yet? Maybe things like, for example, broadband speeds not being quite where they need to be, things like that. What's your view on that?
It's definitely there, because, I'll give my example. For the past, 5 years before last year, I was working and living in Washington, D.C., San Francisco, in financial technology, building, remittance services for Africa. And then, fast forward today, I'm now living and working in Zimbabwe full time, because what I realized is I can literally work with anyone from home, be close to my family. And, we're a Zimbabwean startup. We're the first, Zimbabwean startup to get through Techstars. So some of those things are, the highlights that show that we are on the right path to, reducing that brain drain, which is real. And also one thing that's really interesting is, we connect with small businesses across the world, across the African diaspora, mainly in talk about, African Americans. And one statistic that was really shocking was 93 businesses, Black-owned businesses, 93% of them have less than 5 employees, because they cannot afford to hire, developers in San Francisco. And, when you hire a developer here, this side, it's affordable. It's not cheap, it's affordable. So it allows, those small businesses to grow. So that's something that, we're also connecting with. And, literally we have, off the top of my head, I know 3 clients. One was in Los Angeles. They're now living and working in Ghana. Another who was in London, UK, living and working in Ghana as well. Then another was now in Cote d'Ivoire. So with this is, real life experiences that we're seeing. And I'm not going to say it was because of our platform, but I think, that fact that you've worked with someone on that business card, on that website, and you got that project through completion, it kind of, helps you make your decision to say, you know what, let me actually move to South Africa and see how it goes. Because, subconsciously, you now know someone that you've literally worked with. Because the best way for anyone to know someone is to work with them and see how they work. So these are things that we've already started to see, and I think they're not going to stop. We've seen, expats who live and work outside Africa starting to also return to the continent because they're getting the same value, whether you're in London or you're in Zimbabwe. You're still getting your work done. You're still managing to, get paid and take care of your family. So yeah, these are things that are already, the revolution is already here. Yeah.
But at the same time, then their costs of living are much less. I mean, significantly less. Would you say that point I was making about collectivistic cultures are many of those cultures? I mean, you can't brand Africa as one culture. It's not. It's all completely different, even within countries. But in general, the tendency of people being very collectivistic, very close to their families, family values being very important. Would that be true?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. We have, this Ubuntu culture of, living and working together. And, that's something actually, if you look at everything that we're building, if you look at our website, our marketing, it's actually done by African professionals because, we were actually showing that there is talent here and we can get things done here. There's no need for us, to hire outside, the community. Because we have, we actually launched the Pan-African Freelancers community where someone is able to say, in between time, before you get that job, you can also get resources. You can also have these chat groups where you talk to other freelancers and be able to, to get into freelancing and working together.
Wait, you've hit on something there very important as well, the concept of Ubuntu. This is one of my favorite cultural concepts in the world. Can you tell us more? What is Ubuntu? What does it mean?
Ubuntu is just the culture of togetherness, the culture of, in English, they call it I am because we are. So that means, we put everyone else ahead before ourselves. So that's the concept. And, we use it a lot in our work. We use it in our day-to-day. And it's something that you just have naturally, from your family that teach you those core values. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's such a perfect explanation of the whole collectivism that goes on there, and how that's such a strength of many different cultures. So then, Margaux, coming back to from the Toptal example, you guys have written a fantastic guide on remote work called the Remote Work Playbook. Can you tell us more about that? And can you tell us internally, the Toptal core team, how have you seen that in terms of keeping your own community going and the company culture?
Yeah, this is funny, John. I feel like I could talk about this one for so long. You're right. It's called Toptal Suddenly Remote Playbook, and it was released kind of right at the outset of the pandemic to help a lot of people with that transition. Because like I was kind of saying earlier, we've been this fully distributed company from the very first day. So a lot of those best practices are things that, we're lucky to have kind of already had in place at this point. I mean, lucky maybe being an operative word because we worked really hard at it. But now we're in a really good position, right? We're one of the world's largest fully distributed workforces. And we've got our talent and our core team that are all remote. And really, we've been pioneering what it means to work in this environment. So like I was kind of saying, we've learned all those lessons about technology and productivity and culture and how you can make it work when there is no physical office. And this guide, this playbook is a truly amazing resource. So I encourage people to check it out if you're still kind of figuring out what that looks like for your company or your department, even, personal tips. But basically it offers those tips of remote work, Slack best practices, Zoom etiquette, advice for managers, and also that whole piece of how to create culture and an environment to build on trust. And really, I think the key thing about culture that Toptal that we do really uniquely or really well is that we work really hard to ensure that our values are clear, they're known, and they're reflected constantly in our actions. So basically, they're going to guide everything that we do, from the way that we conduct our interviews to how we interact with our clients, with each other on a daily basis, so that those values, they affect our culture directly and permeate through our whole company. You can even actually go to our website and find our page that talks about culture. And when we do interviews for core team members, we have an interview specifically around a culture interview. And we say, did you really clearly look at that page and do you fully agree with everything? And some things on there might be really direct. There might be things like, we all work really, really hard and here's the expectations, and it's a value for us. And some people might feel uncomfortable with some of the values that are on there. And so we check for that before we hire into our team, and we're really kind of upfront about it. Because if you do that and you put it into everything that you're doing, then whether you're in person or virtually, you know those expectations are there. Even like as simple as, let's say, if you were in person, how would you feel showing up late to a meeting? Well, if you're virtual, you should have that same feeling. So if your team members are constantly late to meetings, we will talk about it, you know? And so it's like we practice what we preach in our values, and then that culture kind of piece really permeates. So I think really that emphasis is really important. There's a kind of a commitment from every team member to understand and uphold them. And every day we express it. And many of them are really, you know, exciting too. And they're inextricably linked to what we're doing. So as a result, essentially, we've amassed this variety of ways that we demonstrate our values. And we do things like all hands meetings where the whole company comes together once a month to talk about kind of where we're at, really open communication from all the different departments about what projects we're working on, what new initiatives are being put in place. We collaborate using all kinds of tech tools. I remember when I first started with Toptal, getting told that, you know, we don't use email and things like that. So it's like, we really like, there's other things we use that are tech tools that are just better for that, like constant chat platforms and things like that, like Slack and Zoom meetings, and we jump on quickly. So there's just all these like rules or best practices that are put in place to help kind of carry that culture piece and those values through everything that we're doing. We do feedback loops, we do pulse surveys, you know, so we can go on and on, but really like we even have a culture committee with a team that comes with people from every different department to run fun challenges and like fun events across the company. So there's a lot of fun stuff. Obviously, I'm in a role called head of community. I work much more with our talent and our freelance network, but a lot of those same things kind of apply from our core team over to creating a culture amongst our freelancers and amongst our amazing talent from around the world. Because, you know, we have to look at the same thing for everybody that we're touching in our organization.
There's some great question here from Shah. What is like suggestions and tips or hacks for the newly digital nomad? Any particular tips any of you would like to give there for Julie on that?
Good question. I mean, I think what we were saying before of joining a group of some kind, whether that's like a physical co-living, co-working space, whether that's an organization that has like job opportunities for you as part of a freelance network, because we all have these like micro communities within them. Once you're around other people, that's going to be, I think, the biggest benefit to you as somebody new to it, because you'll learn by osmosis, but you can also ask any of those direct questions you want and kind of make friends with people who are doing what you're doing. It's hard when you're looking at friends in traditional jobs. So I think that's a really big kind of first step.
No. Any other suggestions?
And I feel, and I feel, you know, knowing about visas and taxation is very important when you're a digital nomad. And I think, John, you have built a great tool. I've seen that, and it's great because even I was not expecting that as an Indian, I'll find information about where can I go, what is the taxation in some other country if I spend time there, and it's great. Thanks for building that. You're serving the humanity.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I've got another question here from Tyler. What does the phrase "internet friends are friends" mean to you as well? Any you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think it means you know, if you connect with someone online, it's a valuable relationship. I remember one of my mentors. I only met them once, and this was after, you know, we met on LinkedIn. They liked the work that we were doing. We kept in touch, and then, you know, they always referred some resources to us. And, you know, fast forward, there's still, you know, a huge they're called transparent collectives based out of LA. And, you know, we've always done everything online. So I think the term basically means, you know, any connection or a relationship that you have online can be of value, you know, if it's, you know, in the professional space.
Okay, good one. So then Mayur, if you look at, let's say, the fact that you can hire somebody the other side of the world, no problem at all. You know, if you look at the Indian context, for example, it's becoming increasingly clear that intercultural communication across different national cultures is becoming more and more important. Are you seeing that become more of a topic, people getting more intercultural training or even being aware of it, for example?
So I think, you know, India stands at a very strategic position when it comes to intercultural communication, because We are a diverse country. Even within India, we have plenty of subcultures. So we are kind of used to dealing with other cultures, and the IT and BPO has really helped India to open up to the world. So when we talk about educated English-speaking Indians who can get a remote job, I think they're quite there when it comes to cultural appropriation or intercultural communication. Of course, there are gaps here and there, and as the world opens up and as jobs become more transitionary and remote, we'll find those gaps being filled up.
Interesting. Second last question for you all. What's your maybe top digital nomad destinations and why, and what motivates you to go to those kind of places? So maybe Margaux, you want to kick it off?
Obviously, NomadGao, and then going to just bum a spot working by Tongayi for fun for a while. So yeah, obviously those ones. No, honestly, it's such a hard question to answer because it's, for fear of like calling out one, which might make you stay and not go to another one. There's so many good places to go. Lately, I've loved working remotely in other cities within my own country. Canada's very spread out. Obviously, traveling is a little bit more cautionary right now at this point in time. So being able to visit friends and family in cities kind of coast to coast, but being able to stay there and work for a longer duration than like what a quick weekend visit in a desk job would allow for. So really, I've been loving that. Again, Canada's really big. So being able to stay other places and not have to go so quick has been really, really great. And I love Latin and Central American locations too. For me, it's easy because that's like straight down. So I'm barely even changing my time zone often to go to some of these beautiful locations. I do have a friend, this is not endorsed, personal suggestion. I have a friend who recently opened a remote work village in Belize. So I'm really excited to check that one out. It's called Umaya Village. And just that said, the joy of being a digital nomad or working in a network like Toptal is that the world is your oyster. So I do intend to visit many locations, and I'm going to take you up on that, Mayur, and pop by.
Great. And Tongayi and Mayur, tell us about your own favorite destination.
It's tough, because you say top 3 and I have like 20. So I'll say Harare, Zimbabwe. Obviously, I love this place. We're actually building a hub here, to help talent, get access to things like internet events and things like that. Then the next would be Ghana and Namibia. So those are the 3 places that I would love within, Africa. Then outside, there's Washington DC. There's just something I like about DC. So that would be, my last. You say 3, but I'll give you 4. Yeah.
The only warning for the US is the residency fees are very low there. You got to be very, very careful from a tax perspective. But I do agree. It's a gorgeous destination. Mayur, what about yourself?
Yeah, so within India, I love the Himalayas. I think we are blessed with having the mountains, such mountains here. And Goa, of course, because when I traveled around Southeast Asia, that's when I said, okay, let me just go back to India, build a community or community of communities rather around India, because India is such a great place for digital nomads to come and explore. It's diverse, the food is diverse, the culture is, culture changes every 100 kilometers, and that's great. Coming to places out of India, I really enjoyed working Bali, of course, from Bali. Spent quite a bit of time there. Then, in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, I stayed at a really nice co-living space, and that's Outpost. It was great because Cambodia is, Phnom Penh especially is not as crowded as a place like Chiang Mai, but still has a nice feel with rivers flowing and a lot of cultural heritage. So yeah, I would recommend those places.
Great. Well, we've got the last question now to all of you. I'll start with Margaux. I mean, we've seen so much change when it comes to work from anywhere. I guess in just a minute each, can you tell us what the kind of digital nomad profile is going to look like in 10 years' time? And maybe are there second or third order effects that we need to watch out for?
Yeah. I think it's not going to be what we expect or what the stereotype might be today. So yes, we definitely hire a lot of developers and engineers at Toptal, but I think we're going to really see a variety of types of people living as digital nomads. We're going to see much more variation. I also think as far as effects, I think co-working and co-living spaces took a hit, some of them during the pandemic, just because obviously people couldn't travel in the same way. I know many here in Canada that closed. But as we see this lifestyle of work from anywhere on the rise post-pandemic, I envision seeing a lot more of these spaces popping up and being really successful. Although we enjoy the flexibility of working remotely or working from home, those kind of spaces are going to be required to support travelers that are working from anywhere and those who want to break even just from their home cities. So I think that we'll see that change as well.
Very interesting. And Tongayi, what do you think? What's your own view?
Yeah, I think, currently in Africa, there are only 3 million active freelancers. And I think that number is going to continuously rise in an exponential way, such that like Margaux just mentioned, all those biases are going to change as people work together on engineers, developers, designers, and things like that. So I think the profile is going to be so diverse. You're literally going to be working with someone from anywhere, which is I guess the goal of work from anywhere. So I think that's the change.
Yeah, fascinating. And Mayur, what do you think? What's your own view?
So I think as digital nomads, we need to think about how we contribute to local economies or local communities. It's complicated because the data or the research is very limited, because so far digital nomad was in itself a smaller community. But if they flock to a place like Chiang Mai, the local rents and prices go up and locals can't afford them anymore. So I'm afraid such kind of things will happen, and it will take some time to achieve that balance. We are also working on a social project. So we said, okay, people can work from anywhere. That means they can go to a place which is underprivileged and can actually help locals in rural, in villages to gain new age skills like using social media effectively, or simple things like using your phone properly and doing business. So we are working on that. We are working on leveraging our community for local development. And I think that's the second and third order effect of digital
very
nomadism.
good points as to contributing to the communities. That's something that's been mentioned before as well. Well, listen, I would like to thank you all so much for coming on board our episode today. Really enjoyed the contributions from you all. Great mix of different perspectives and different locations around the world, in every single continent in the world. So massive thank you to you all. And well, I guess that's it. Thanks again, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Cheers.
Bye.